All right, let's move on to the next one. We're going to hear educational robotics for physically active youth, otherwise known as P.A.Y. It's all yours.
I'm Annie Hughes.
I'm Jenna Hirschfeld.
I'm Mylan Charter.
And I'm Chloe Melville.
And we developed an educational robotics curriculum for physically active youth, an after-school program in Katatura, Namibia.
Katatura is a township in Namibia that was hit hard by apartheid. The town still faces struggles today, including overpopulation and rural poverty. Because of this, the education system sees negative consequences, such as high dropout rates and youth turning to drugs and alcohol. Our sponsor, Physically Active Youth, is an after-school program in Katatura. The staff, along with its many volunteers, provide the necessary support to the community's youth, providing a meal, homework help, and time for sport as part of their daily routine as P.A.Y strives to prepare their learners for a positive future.
Originally, our sponsor at P.A.Y, Tuba Sabanda, challenged us to create a hands-on robotics curriculum that we would deliver personally to her students. She wanted them to experience project-based learning in order to develop teamwork, communication, and technical skills, and an educational robotics platform was what she had proposed to do that with. Although we cannot deliver the lessons that we developed in person, we were able to create an online learning platform that still utilizes hands-on learning through a website-based curriculum that's guided by a facilitator. In order to accomplish our new goal, we had to modify our original objectives, and they were changed to be develop a hands-on robotics curriculum that inspires STEM through an online learning platform, and create a comprehensive toolkit for P.A.Y staff to support the delivery of the provided curriculum. Our methodology was broken down into 3 parts: equip, create, and review and refine. In the equip phase, we determined which supplies would be needed for the project. In create, we developed a lesson plan approach, outlined our curriculum, and created topics for a facilitator manual. Finally, in review and refine, we planned a feedback process involving educators and students, which would use their comments to make improvements on our curriculum. In the following slides, we will discuss the methods along with their outcomes tangentially.
The goal for the first step of the methodology, equip, was to prepare all materials and resources needed to complete the project. We started by identifying our needs for resources, and we came up with 4 areas. First, we researched robotics kits and chose the one most suitable for use at P.A.Y. This decision was based on ease of use, functionality, durability, and price. We decided that VexIQ kits were the best option. A classroom bundle of 12 VexIQ kits cost around $5,000, so in order to afford them, we needed to fundraise. We explored grants through WPI and possible sponsorship from companies. Then we applied to WPI's Tinkerbox program and reached out to the Robotics Education and Competition Foundation. Additionally, we created a GoFundMe page for supplemental donations. Through all of these avenues of fundraising, we raised enough money to purchase the kits and cover transportation costs, which was our next area of focus. We explored the possibility of shipping the kits to Namibia and bringing them as personal cargo, but the final decision will be made at a later date when there are less variables. Lastly, we researched and experimented with several different online platforms for our curriculum, and we ultimately decided to use Wix. We made this decision because it was free, accessible to everyone, and had all the capabilities we needed.
The goal for our second step in our methodology was to outline the steps necessary to develop a hands-on robotics curriculum while incorporating the online learning component. This section provides the framework that we use to develop the lessons as well as the supplemental facilitator manual, and it shows how we blended our hands-on curriculum with the robotics kits through this online curriculum delivery. In order to make a straightforward content for the curriculum, we utilize this lesson creation approach. This helped us to maintain consistency in structuring the lessons. At the start of each lesson, we identified the objectives at the top of each page, encouraging the students to acknowledge the main idea and keep in mind the key takeaways for each lesson. Every lesson aimed to activate prior knowledge of the students, whether it be from prior education or from other lessons that we had already presented through the curriculum. We then evaluated the topics in relation to the level that we would be targeting. This then dictated the mode with which we introduced the new material and delivered the content. For younger age groups, we tended to include more videos to ensure engagement, as the reading comprehension level is a little bit lower. For older age groups, we used a balance of video content and text presented to maintain our student interest. We then included probing questions throughout the entire lesson to guide the learner's understanding and to direct the applications to real-world examples. Throughout all of this, we kept in mind that these lessons would eventually be implemented in a classroom. While developing all of these lessons, we tried to develop supplemental materials as well that we would eventually include in our Facilitator Manual. In an effort to provide a robotics experience that students at P.A.Y can enjoy year after year, we developed 3 different age groups, as you can see on the screen. Each age group has 2 different levels so that students can continue to use them sequentially as they complete them. Level 1 assumes no prior robotics experience or programming experience, and level 2 is aimed at students that either have experience or have completed level 1 in the past. The lessons were designed to incorporate concepts from previous lessons in succession and apply ideas to hands-on experiences and examples using the VexIQ robots through a build section in every single level. Each level has 4 lessons, and they cover topics in software, hardware, building, and testing of robots. This is an example of an intermediate level, level 1, and it has the 4 lessons as I explained, but we're now going to head over to the website to see these lessons in real time. So this is our online learning platform that allowed us the opportunity to include different experiences for the students and supplemental materials for the facilitators. Each level starts off with an introductory lesson, which provides background information for the students so that they're all on a level playing field before starting the lessons. They would then move on to level 1 or level 2. Each level has 4 lessons. As you can see in this particular intermediate level 1, we have a lesson covering topics in programming, drivetrains, which are mechanical concepts behind robots. And then lesson 3 and lesson 4 introduce Robbie the robot, a character we used to help them build a robot with the VexIQ and test that robot as well. If we click on Programming Palooza, you can see on the right-hand side of the screen that we did incorporate video content to keep students engaged. We also used online programming tools such as Scratch and VexVR, and this allowed us to incorporate activities directly on the website. And it also let us have challenges for the students that might want to move forward a little. You can see on the left that we incorporated review sections if students needed to go back to review certain topics from previous levels. We incorporated a facilitator manual that allows the facilitators to download this directly from the website. This table of contents goes through every single lesson we created. So if we click on Programming Palooza, for example, the lesson we just saw on the website, you can see different recommendations, resources, vocabulary, and all the things that a teacher might need in order to implement this lesson in the classroom.
So our facilitator manual starts with general recommendations before then going into very specific ones pertaining to each lesson. The recommendations are broken into 6 categories, which are resources, duration, materials, recommendations, vocabulary, and pacing. Some examples of those recommendations include suggested activities that could be done in the classroom, also additional video resources, vocab lists that accompany each lesson, and some helpful comments on how facilitator can present each of these lessons. The intention with this manual is that anyone, whether they're a STEM or a non-STEM educator or even a parent at home, could further enrich these lessons on the website and engage the students in the classroom.
The final step in our methodology is the review and refine process, with the goal of evaluating the data collected from student and educator feedback to improve the curriculum and provide recommendations. One of our methods for evaluating the curriculum was to have it reviewed by educators. The participants included teachers, both STEM and non-STEM, and robotics team mentors. First, we emailed the materials, which included a blank feedback document, the link to the website, and instructions for providing feedback so that all responses were consistent. Participants were then asked to review the specified section and comment on each of the 8 lessons, along with providing general feedback about the layout, age appropriateness, and engagement of the lessons. At the end of each educator feedback round, we compiled all the comments and used them to revise each section as necessary. Finally, we thematically coded the responses and came up with 4 main themes, which we will further discuss in the next slide. Our first theme addressed the layout of the website, noting that lessons had consistent formatting and the site was eye-catching and easy to navigate. Then we picked age appropriateness, which addressed difficulty of the lessons and use of appropriate language for the groups. This is a quote that we received from one of our reviewers regarding age appropriateness. It reads, "This is certainly age appropriate for a motivated and engaged group of students. There's an appropriate amount of independent work time, so it's important that your participants are inquisitive and active participants." Next was engagement. The summarized that the activities included were engaging, ensuring that there wasn't an overload of content which could cause students to lose interest, and applying concepts learned to real-life examples. Lastly was content. This focused on pacing of the levels, making sure that the material was accurate and succinct and concepts were complete, with another quote from our reviewers reading, "These are great lesson plans. I actually learned a lot. I felt that I could implement them even though I don't have any experience with robotics or programming. I would love to share these with the STEAM teacher at my school."
After we received feedback from educators, we started student trials to receive feedback from students themselves. These students ranged in ages and experience level. Some had the VEX IQ kit while others did not, so they only completed the lessons in which it wasn't needed. We completed trials for the beginner and intermediate age groups, but due to time constraints, we decided to trial the advanced curriculum ourselves in order to ensure that the lessons were comprehensive. First, we sent background surveys and the link to our lessons to 5 students in the beginner and intermediate age groups. The background survey asked how old the student was and how much prior experience with robotics they had, if any. We asked each student to complete 2 to 3 lessons and submit feedback surveys. The feedback surveys had questions about their enjoyment of the activity, the difficulty level, and any other comments they had. We then compiled the feedback and analyzed the data. In general, the students really enjoyed the lessons and the majority of the feedback was positive. We asked on a scale of 1 to 5 how much they enjoyed the lessons. 63% answered 5, 25% answered 4, and only 12% answered 3, with no responses of 1 or 2. On the right, we have a quote from one student saying that her least favorite part was having to stop because she did not have the VEX IQ kit. This was encouraging because it demonstrates the students were eager to continue learning and move further in the lesson. Next, we asked on a scale of 1 to 5 how difficult the lessons were. 50% of students answered 3, 37% of students answered 2, and 13% answered 4. This indicates that the difficulty was right around the middle of the scale, not too challenging and not too easy. If anything, the lessons were slightly too easy for students, but some of the students participating in the trial had prior experience. Very few students in our target audience have any robotics experience, so the lessons should be the right difficulty level for them. We also have a quote from one of the parents of the participants saying that the lessons were well thought out and very age appropriate. Lastly, we asked if the lessons made the students want to learn more about robotics. 87% said yes, with only 13% or 1 student saying no. The student who said no had previous experience in robotics, and he actually completed levels that were too easy for him. His feedback demonstrated that we needed to clarify which levels were appropriate for different ages and skill levels, but it also confirmed that we had the correct content in our lessons. The student expressed interest in learning more about building different structures and adjusting the robot to handle certain tasks, things like lift mechanisms, picking up objects, drivetrains, etc. If he had continued into further lessons, the student would have been exposed to all these concepts that he said he wanted to learn about.
Lastly, we have a series of recommendations based on our experiences completing the project. These recommendations address feedback that we are unable to incorporate into the final product, further development of the platform that we did not have the time for, or anything else that we felt could be added to improve this curriculum in the future. If the project was to be continued, we would recommend adding more levels into each age group and covering the material more in depth with some additional activities. We would also suggest making more detailed instructional videos, both to replace video resources we had used and to provide additional guidance for some activities. For P.A.Y, we provided recommendations on how best to use the website and how they can improve and expand upon the foundation of the curriculum. These recommendations are specific to each lesson and included in the teacher manual. We also spoke with our sponsors at P.A.Y this morning and gave them an overview of the website, answering any questions that they had. This website is also intended for other educators and programs similar to P.A.Y that do not have access to a robotics curriculum. Therefore, these recommendations are like those that we have for P.A.Y, and we hope that our educator manual can be a useful resource for other organizations as well. Finally, we intend for this project to be continued at future IQPs that are of the same or similar field in an effort to bring educational robotics to disadvantaged communities around the world. We recommend that teams use our curriculum as a basis and modify it to fit the culture of the location by giving relevant real-world examples and adjusting the pace according to the prior knowledge and skill level of the participating students. We would like to take this time to thank everyone who contributed to this project. First, we'd like to thank our professors, Joseph Doran and Ken Stafford. We'd also like to thank the educators who provided us with feedback on our curriculum and the students that trialed and provided feedback on the website. We'd also like to thank anyone who donated to our GoFundMe page. Those funds are going to be used to transport the kids to P.A.Y. once we determine the best method of transportation. We'd also like to thank our sponsors, Tuba Sabanda, Matt Kapukara, and Physically Active Youth for being amazingly adaptive and supportive sponsors during this time. We'd also like to thank Curtis Abel and WPI Tinkerbox for providing the $2,500 grant that we used to pursue this project. And finally, we'd like to thank the REC Foundation with a special thanks to Dan Mance, the CEO and chairman of the board, for coordinating the $2,500 donation that we used with the Tinkerbox grant to purchase the VexIQ robotics kits for P.A.Y. Without these folks, we would have never been able to complete this project. We'd like to take this time for any questions you might have.
Great, thank you so much. Are there any questions?
Yeah, I think this is really great work. I love the idea and what you guys were able to do. And I recognize you weren't able to get to Namibia to roll it out. Have you thought about using this for maybe more local organizations, things like the Y or the Boys and Girls Club, other areas where there's a need or demand for these kinds of programs, but maybe not so much the resources to implement them?
The STEM Education Center at WPI does a lot of outreach with local schools and after-school programs, providing programs on WPI's campus and also off campus as well. So we did have the idea to potentially reach out to them with this resource to see if there was any way that they could implement it through their avenues.
Well, lucky for you, Kathy Chen and Shari Weaver are on the line. So so now you've put that idea in their heads.
Once we decided to create the online platform, we were excited because we wanted to create something that was accessible to anyone who was interested in it. And a lot of the teachers who reviewed our lessons said that they were interested in using it in their classrooms or sharing it, like you saw with one of the quotes with the STEAM coordinator at their school. So we're also planning on sending it out to all of those teachers, and it's kind of just accessible to anyone who's interested.
Great. Any other questions?
Team P.A.Y, this is Curtis. Well done. Very inspiring what you've accomplished here. Do you have, based upon testing out what you've developed, what was kind of some aha moments in terms of teaching moments that you've encountered, and what recommendations would you have for higher ed faculty in terms of engaging and inspiring students?
I think that,
You can go. Go for it, Jenna.
I think one thing that we got a lot of feedback on at the beginning is that we were using a lot of videos to explain the material and not as many activities. So definitely just trying to balance engagement with activities and presenting material. That was a big thing that we worked on throughout every lesson.
Yeah, it was definitely difficult though, not having that, in the classroom experience to be able to make sure that the students specifically at P.A.Y would be, excited and engaged through this. But we were fortunate enough to, be able to send this out to some students that we were able to connect with. So they, got to take a look at it, gave us some feedback on it. So.
Thank you. Well done.
I have one question for you folks. One of the outcomes, as was just mentioned by Curtis and other folks, of these kinds of programs is to inspire folks to want to do something technologically challenging when they get through their choices of education. So all four of you folks have chosen to come to WPI and pursue technical educations. Was there a moment in your early education or experiences that you could think back that could function like this one did, or did you have any robots in your past?
Yeah, I actually can trace like my start in engineering all the way back to 7th grade when there was a VEX team at my middle school. It wasn't VEX IQ, it was VRC, which is similar, but they're metal robots. And my friend who was in 8th grade kind of roped me onto the team because at the time, 7th graders like weren't allowed to be on it, you know, for some reason. And we ended up going to Worlds that year. So after getting roped into that VEX very early on, that set me on a path to do robotics for the rest of my time in middle school and then going through high school. And that really influenced my decision to come to WPI because ultimately I found out about WPI because of Battle Cry, which is a robotics competition that they hold with the first FRC program. So yeah, if I didn't get involved in specifically VEX, interestingly enough, back in 7th grade, I might not be at WPI today. So I think that things like this 100%, that ropes a kid in right at the time that you need to rope them in to set them on a path to do stuff like this for the rest of their life, which is really cool.
Thanks.
That's great. Is Tuba and Mac, are you still on the line?
Yes, we're still on the line. On behalf of P.A.Y, I would like to say thank you guys. The team has done quite an amazing job so far. Can't wait to start. And thanks to WPI as well and the professors. Yeah.
Well, great. Yeah, thanks so much, Mac. And we look forward to being able to get the robots to you so that you can actually use the curriculum that they've designed.
Yes.
I'm sure you're not excited at all to start playing around with them either.
I can't wait to put my hands on them. I'm very excited.
Great. Well, thank you so much. And to you and Tuba and the rest of the P.A.Y team.
Thank you, guys.
Great. Well, thanks so much.